Totem and Taboo is a pivotal work in the history of psychoanalytic thought, authored by Sigmund Freud in 1913. The book explores the intersections between psychology, anthropology, and mythology, proposing that certain social taboos and cultural symbols, or totems, arise from deep, universal psychological processes. Freud's analysis focuses on primitive societies and the development of human civilization, as he attempts to uncover the psychological underpinnings of cultural practices. His ideas were groundbreaking but also controversial, as they merged psychoanalytic theory with ethnographic observation in ways that have been both praised and critiqued. Background and Freud's motivation. Freud was a pioneer in the study of the unconscious mind, and his work on dreams, sexuality, and childhood experiences formed the backbone of psychoanalysis. By the time he wrote Totem and Taboo, Freud had already published key texts such as The Interpretation of Dreams in 1900 and 3 essays on the theory of sexuality in 1905. His motivation for writing Totem and Taboo stemmed from his interest in applying psychoanalytic concepts to broader questions about human culture. Specifically, Freud sought to explain how psychological mechanisms that shape individual behavior also influence the development of societal norms and taboos. Freud's approach was influenced by contemporary anthropological theories, particularly the work of Sir James Frazer, author of The Golden Bough in 1890. Frazer's research into the magical and religious beliefs of so-called primitive societies inspired Freud to link psychological theories with anthropological data. In Totem and Taboo, Freud draws on reports from ethnographers and explorers about the customs and beliefs of indigenous peoples, using these examples to bolster his psychoanalytic interpretations. The 4 essays. The book is divided into 4 essays, each dealing with different aspects of totemism, taboo, and their psychological significance. The horror of incest. The first essay addresses the incest taboo, a prohibition against sexual relations between close relatives, which Freud regarded as a universal feature of human societies. Freud theorized that the incest taboo arose from a psychological process known as the Oedipus complex, where children feel unconscious sexual desire for their opposite-sex parent and hostility toward their same-sex parent. In Freud's view, the fear of incest and the strict social regulations around kinship relations reflect repressed desires within the unconscious mind. In his analysis, Freud also referenced Darwin's theory of evolution, suggesting that in early human societies, groups were organized around patriarchal clans, with the father exerting strict control over the sexual lives of his offspring. This led to the formation of taboos that governed sexual behavior, specifically the prohibition of incestuous relationships, which prevented social and familial conflict. Freud's idea was that the suppression of incestuous urges through the taboo was not merely a social regulation but a psychological necessity that contributed to the structure of society itself. By internalizing these prohibitions, individuals were able to channel their desires into socially acceptable behaviors, laying the groundwork for the development of morality and social cohesion. Taboo and emotional ambivalence. The second essay explores the nature of taboos, prohibitions that seem irrational yet carry powerful emotional force in primitive societies. Freud suggested that taboos, such as the avoidance of contact with the dead or restrictions around certain animals, totems, originate from deeply ambivalent feelings. Taboos, in his view, are not simply prohibitions imposed by society but are rooted in internal psychological conflicts, particularly the tension between love and hate. Freud argued that in primitive societies, emotional ambivalence toward figures like the father or chieftain played a role in the formation of taboos. A totemic animal, for example, was simultaneously revered and forbidden because it represented both the protector and the potential rival. Freud drew parallels between the ambivalent feelings humans have toward their parents, especially the father figure, and the sacred yet forbidden status of the totem animal. He also compared taboos to the obsessive-compulsive behaviors observed in neurotic patients. In both cases, an irrational and unconscious fear prompts individuals to avoid certain actions or objects, even though they may simultaneously be drawn to them. Freud suggested that such rituals and prohibitions, whether in primitive cultures or neurotic individuals, serve as a defense mechanism against the expression of forbidden desires. Animism, magic, and the omnipotence of thoughts. The third essay examines animism and magical thinking, both of which are prevalent in the belief systems of indigenous and traditional societies. Animism refers to the belief that objects, plants, animals, and even natural phenomena possess a spirit or consciousness, while magical thinking involves the belief that individuals can influence the physical world through ritual or symbolic acts. Freud argued that these beliefs arise from the human mind's tendency to overestimate the power of thoughts and wishes, a phenomenon he called the omnipotence of thoughts. According to Freud, children and primitive peoples both exhibit this trait, as they believe that thinking about something can bring it into reality or cause events to happen. This is also connected to Freud's theory of narcissism, where the ego believes itself to be the center of the universe, capable of influencing external events. In psychoanalytic terms, Freud saw a link between animism and the early development of the human psyche. Just as children believe that their thoughts can affect the world around them, primitive societies believe that rituals and symbols have real power. Freud suggested that as societies evolve, this magical thinking is gradually replaced by more rational and scientific approaches, though remnants of it persist in religious and superstitious practices. The return of totemism in childhood. In the final essay, Freud returned to the concept of totemism, which involves the worship or veneration of animals or plants that are believed to be the ancestors or protectors of a clan. He suggested that totemism reflects the earliest form of religion and that it emerges from the primal horde's rebellion against the father figure. Freud built on his earlier theory of the Oedipus complex, positing that early human societies were organized around a dominant male, the father, who controlled the sexual access to women in the group. Freud theorized that eventually, the younger males in the horde banded together to overthrow and kill the father, thus freeing themselves from his dominance. However, after the father's death, they felt both guilt and fear, which led them to create the totemic system. The totem, usually an animal, became a symbolic substitute for the father, and it was both revered and forbidden. No one was allowed to kill or eat the totem animal, just as no one was allowed to challenge the father's authority. This primal murder, according to Freud, lay at the root of both religion and morality. Totemism represented the first step toward the establishment of social order, as the guilt over the father's death was transformed into the rules and taboos that governed society. Freud's controversial claim was that this same psychological process could be found in the development of modern religious practices, which he viewed as an evolution of totemic belief systems. Criticism and legacy. Totem and Taboo has been both influential and controversial. Some anthropologists criticized Freud for relying on outdated or inaccurate ethnographic data, while others took issue with his sweeping generalizations about primitive societies. Nonetheless, Freud's attempt to apply psychoanalytic theory to the study of culture has had a lasting impact, particularly in fields such as cultural studies, sociology, and the study of religion. The book's exploration of the psychological origins of taboo, guilt, and ritual continues to provoke debate. Freud's emphasis on the unconscious mind as a driving force behind social institutions challenged conventional understandings of culture and paved the way for future interdisciplinary approaches to psychology and anthropology. In conclusion, Totem and Taboo remains a key text in understanding Freud's broader intellectual project, as well as the psychological mechanisms that shape human societies and their cultural practices. Despite its limitations, Freud's fusion of psychoanalysis with anthropological inquiry continues to inspire discussions about the deep connections between the mind, culture, and society.